as a communicator, as someone who's giving the message, it's your responsibility to be understood clearly. And as a listener, it's your responsibility to get the information, regardless of the method it's said, regardless of the person who's talking. There's benefit in understanding what is a tendency of the people that we're talking to so that we can speak their language, not really boxing them into these categories, but really trying to adapt to different kind of languages per se.
Welcome to the Mindform podcast, where we delve into the minds of some of the most interesting people on the planet, discuss psychology, philosophy, and personal growth, and share the wisdom we uncover with you. Join us as we explore the art of forming our minds. Here's your host, Frank Lawton.
Kia ora from New Zealand. Welcome to the Mindform podcast, an extension of the Mindform collective and training platform. This podcast is similarly a space dedicated to exploring and altering psychological landscapes together. In each weekly episode, I speak with a member of Mindform to extract wisdom, refine ideas, and collaborate on the game of architecting our minds. So this week's guest is Arwill Recto. Longtime member of the platform. Arwill is a partner and a father of one, soon to be two. Congrats. He's got a curious systems thinking, problem solver's mind, and he's passionate about self-improvement and self-awareness, especially as that relates to better communication and relationships at work and at home. These ideas are exactly what interests and excites me. It's what I chose to talk about when I got to be a guest on the podcast. So I'm keen to discover and tease apart Arwill's personal wisdom on this topic. How are you feeling today, Arwill? What's alive in you?
Feeling great. Thank you very much, Frank, for inviting me, and mabuhay from the Philippines.
Oh,
That's
cool.
like long live.
Yeah, awesome. Can you say it again so I can know it?
Yeah, that's mabuhay.
Mabuhay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I'll just start with a little bit about you entering the landscape of your mind. So tell us a bit about your growth journey. What are some key learnings and experiences that have informed your sort of growth, personal development journey as it stands today?
I think my experience, Frank, is a bit common, based on some of the guests here as well. I grew up in a Christian household, so a very conservative one. And during my teenage years, I really focused on preaching work, volunteerism, all those good stuff. But then when I started working, then that's when my focus shifted. And then, typical burnout at work. And during the pandemic, that's when I got depressed. And that's actually when my self-improvement journey started. So I started digging into, psychology, tried reading some books, and that's when I came across Ryan's work, Designing the Mind. And then, there's the Flourishing Function program, the anxiety algorithm. So those really helped me a lot. So what really shook my identity was when I read some stuff, about the religion I used to be with, and then that kind of really started what I believed in as a kid.
Mm.
Then that's when I explored other stuff, from believing into Christianity, I shifted to um, sort of being an agnostic, or maybe even an atheist back then, and tried to focus more on existentialism, where I tried to find my purpose, tried to create my own purpose versus, just following God as a purpose. Then after really, reading a lot of works, stoicism, and other self-improvement books, what really struck me the most was Seven Habits of Effective People.
Yeah, Stephen Covey. Yeah, I really
So,
liked that book.
yep, there you go. So what really helped me there was um, him telling that we shouldn't really anchor our happiness or purpose to money, people. Just identify what you really believe on, and if you think that that's the right thing to do, then that's where you should anchor whatever it is that
Hmm.
you're doing. So after that, came up with these things that I always remind myself of, so that I know that I'm on the right path. So that's rectitude, um, gratitude, and happiness. So those three things. So I always think, if I will be doing this stuff, is it the right thing? Am I really thankful that I'm going to do this task or path? I'm going to take this path, and will it really bring me, deeper happiness?
Mm.
So far, those three words are, really helping me a lot.
What was
So
so?
I guess that's a short version of my journey.
Yeah, I mean, anyone's journey you could talk about for days, right? What was the first of those three words? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Rectitude,
Rectitude. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, gratitude, and happiness.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, no, that's a great approach, and I think I love what you've shared there. I think that a lot of us on this journey have little things like that, little moments, realizations that we've found and we've locked
Right.
into. It's like, oh, that's powerful, and we just carry that with us. I have a little list. I used to have it on these paper cards that were crumbling, so I've just made a digital version I'm going to print and laminate soon. But it's just true worldviews. It's like things that I've sort of perspectives I've come to have as I've been reading and contemplating about my life that feel like really true, but also are empowering. Like thinking about or just things like maybe like I am enough, or like people are good deep down, or sort of everything I believe can be questioned, like your perspective has a big impact, just things like that. And I was like, just remembering that, like, and just there are these few anchors I find that when I reorient in that direction, I have better clarity and I can make better decisions. So I that's what I like to do on this podcast. I like to find people's little things. That's a psychotechnology right there. It's like it's an anchoring thing. So that's really cool. Oh, you said something about before I wanted to ask about, but I forgot, and I'm sure it'll come back to me. But I'm going to paint a little picture here. So imagine a map and a landscape, right? So this journey you've been on, the books you've read, the places you've gone, the new life you live with work and family. This is the landscape you've been walking, and then on as well as that, you carry a map with you. It's your beliefs, it's your ideas, it's your values. So, a few things you've found that you've really put down as important points on your map, right? Is this rectitude, gratitude, happiness? Um, but a broader question: where do you think you've been journeying to throughout this? What have you been looking for as you revise your map, as you update your wisdom, and try to sort of improve yourself, improve the way you navigate life? What do you feel you've been looking for?
I can't really say back then,
Mm-hmm.
because years ago I didn't have my wife with me, our kids, or our kid, and then now it's a growing family now. But back then I was really focused on, improving myself, just thinking of how I can really be happy. So long as I'm grateful of the things that I'm doing, so long as I'm happy with what I'm doing, so long as I'm doing the right thing, feel like I'm doing the right stuff. But I feel like every day I keep on trying, just trying to convince myself that I'm happy. There's still that question, am I really happy? Now I'm going to check my journal, my logs, and my achievements, and yeah, I think I'm happy. So that's how I've been functioning for the longest. Then, I met my wife. I have a stepson. After we've met and after I started helping her with parenthood, something clicked in me, and something I realized that I feel like happiness isn't really about just focusing on yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's more of giving to others. Like, Ryan keeps on talking about altruism, and when I was, reading those stuff, I can't seem to relate back then. But now that I have a kid and I try to help him, I try to teach him, try to mentor him, there's this sort of satisfaction, happiness that I'm getting whenever I'm showing that love, showing that empathy or compassion to others. So I feel like before I'm more focused on really improving myself, just learning more stuff. But now I feel like it should also have something to do with helping others, trying to do more with in the community. So I think in terms of shift, that's where I was at, just selfish kind of improvement. But now it's more collaborative, I'd say. There's more partnership. There's more um, harmony, I'd say, with
Mm,
the people around you.
mm,
So
mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So sort of, yeah. At the beginning, your journey was motivated by a need for maybe confidence that you're doing the right thing, going in a good direction, that kind of self assuredness, and then maybe yeah, a need to feel good, right? Just a need for happiness. But I think all of us have that need as well. That's just ubiquitous, which is yeah, need to be part of something bigger than ourselves, to know that we're valuable in a collective. But it's not always something. I think we all have it all the time, but I think it's not always something that's salient until maybe we get a bit older, or maybe our culture doesn't always tell us
Yeah,
it's the most important thing. Another sort of three words, in fact, that I have for myself that relates to what you've been saying is uh, character, communion, and compassion. And I consider these to be sort of like three things you can always do that are sort of a instant but also total path to flourishing. So like for example, so just for each of them, so character is this like, oh, can I be living out my values? Can I be being the person that I admire? That sort of thing. And through that, you get pride and it's great, but you also in that. And then there's compassion, which is what you're saying, and it's a different thing, right? I mean, compassion is a virtue, I suppose, but it's a different kind of feeling. It's not pride or clarity or self satisfaction. It's this deeper, cuddly, abiding joy, right? When you feel like you're, yeah, just when your attention is on someone else and you're giving to them, it's this release in a way as well from self concern. And then I see a third one that's different again is communion, which is it's sort of like gratitude. What you were talking about, it's just about being like here for life and being present for life and being connected to it, which again I think is a different category of happiness or joy or flourishing. But yeah, I do see those as overlapping but distinct types of flourishing, the giving to others and the working on yourself. But of course, they impact each other a lot, don't they?
I agree.
Yeah, man. Okay, well, as you've been on this journey, first for yourself, now more than that, and it seems like that's sort of a broadening interest for you as well. You're discovering the joy of giving to other people. What have been one or two major revisions you've made to your map? So to your perspective about the world, your perspective about how things work. What are two big changes in perspective you've had sort of in the last 5 years as you've worked on this?
We already touched on some of these. Um, Especially during my teenage year, I was really um, believing that my purpose is to serve God. Then when I started working, started doing a lot of more secular work because back then I didn't finish college, so just high school, and then I started preaching. So instead of going to college, I focused really more on volunteering to preaching work. You can call it like a missionary work as
Mm-hmm.
well. Then after I'd say good 4 years, that's when I started working, and then that kind of opened up my world into different views, different beliefs. Then, because I used to believe that the world would end in a matter of years,
No.
but that shifted. So I think in terms of shift in belief, that's a major shift. Then again, I mentioned um, another revision when I read some controversies of the religion, and that really shook my belief, my identity. And I stopped believing in God, and then again, just creating my own purpose in life. That's how it shifted. And then once I got married, and now we have kid and another one coming in this September, there's this unknown there's this feeling sometimes that I just want to talk to someone that someone I'd say bigger, if that
Yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sense. So so then I remember I was really struggling with a problem. I did, this is after I've read a lot of stuff already. I've worked on myself in terms of self improvement. Still, there's something missing. So that's when I gave prayer another try, and that's sort of worked for me. So I guess that's another shift suddenly, and that this was just last year that I want to explore. So after all of these things that I've already read, after all of these shifts in my belief, this is another one. It seems like I'm going back to my old one, but I feel like I've learned more about myself and learned more um, about different philosophies, I'd say, and
Mm.
even dug deeper into psychology. And I feel like I could still believe in these two things without trying to make them fight each other, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think it does make sense, and there's a lot of different things um, that one can mean by God, right? And there's a
Hmm.
lot of different ways one can relate with whatever concept they have there. It reminds me a bit of my wife's journey. She grew up Christian, and it was very much like a rules based thing, at least for her. I think that was partly how it was presented to her as well. This is sort of this is how you get to heaven, and this is how you don't, and that was sort of how it was understood. And I think that conception of God as like a judge or as a rule book or
Hmm.
um, yeah, as a critic or whatever. And she sort of went away a little bit from that, never fully kind of rejecting faith or anything, but then she had her own personal experiences, and now she has a different kind of concept of God and a different way that she relates to that. But it's something that certainly uh, has more openness for her and for her real values and for personal growth and all of that stuff. And it's a God that's more about the relationship you have with Him rather than do you measure up. And it's a God whose values maybe are more things like love, connection,
Hmm.
flourishing rather than sort of correctness or something like that. So I think it's not an uncommon journey for people who grow up in faith and then um, have the kind of mind where they need to figure things out for themselves and go their own way.
Right.
That they discover something that maybe uses the same words, but it's different. It's different. Are there things that you say you went on like a mission sort of path of like ministry and all of that? Are there pieces from that world that you take with you today in your growth journey? Because there's certainly not a complete lack. There's much in Christianity and in that world that's to do with
Definitely.
communication or personal development or whatever. Like, are there pieces of that remain impactful and relevant to you as you work on yourself?
Definitely. I used to, regret my life as a teenager when going back because again, I didn't go to college. Just and here in the Philippines, it's really difficult to find a job
Mm,
if you don't have a degree.
right.
So I was really beating myself up. But since my line of work is customer service back then, my experience dealing with different people, talking to other people, trying to um, convince them with your belief, that really helped me with work. So I'd say one um, one great thing that I learned from I took from it was communication,
Hmm.
and I really thank my experience in preaching work because of that. And I think it also helped me connect with people much better. I focus more on building good relationship rather than just getting things done. I still want to get things done, but also try to look at the long term
Hmm.
and see if how I could build a good connection with these people so that in the future maybe there's benefit from still having them in my life, or maybe for work, or just having some good friends around.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. So and that is just sticking on that. That is, even if it's not necessarily Christianity itself, but I think it's valuable to a lot of people who grow up in a religion or in a worldview that isn't just like the normal secular worldview. I think my experience is I encounter those people, and there's just a little bit more appreciation for some of those values that aren't the ones that are put on the pedestal in sort of normal secular culture, right? Which is things like, relationship, community, um, service, that sort of stuff. And it's cool. I feel like it's cool to see though. There's more and more conversation about that stuff in the secular world. I feel people saying, "Oh, this is missing. I want this." And so there's no reason it can't exist in secular society. It just, I felt like, existed a bit
And
less.
I definitely agree. I know there was one episode where um, it was discussed, the difference between morality and
Mm.
just wisdom. I could agree that being in the faith for during my teenage years helped me have some sort of training wheels, helped me decide better once I got older, once I'm in adulthood. So I really think that those values were really embedded into you because of religion, and that's something that maybe we can, for those who aren't in faith and who do not believe in God, I'd say this is, I think, something that we can take out from religion that's good, so long as it's balanced, so long as it isn't forced.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I agree. So you've obviously talked this whole time, there's been through this journey, navigating faith, starting a family, with your work and communication. Um, you've mentioned, and the personal self improvement journey I was on through that, right? And you were reading all of these books. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about like what specifically that means to you in terms of self improvement. Like, what about yourself? Are have you been trying to improve? What is self? Maybe just start with what is self improvement to you.
In order for you to really improve or enter the journey of self-improvement, there should be self-awareness first. And for me, self-awareness is really about exerting that conscious effort
Mm,
to watch your behavior or reaction, and then try to analyze what that behavior does to you and how does that impact others. Because by doing so, by trying to analyze your behavior, your tendencies, it will help you identify what areas of yourself you should improve on, the way people are reacting to your words, your actions. Maybe from there you'd learn something, and how to adapt. It's more of really being aware of your actions, your words, your tendencies and behavior.
So, in sort of pragmatic terms, would you describe that self awareness as things like reflecting or journaling, or maybe developing that sort of metacognitive skill of like noticing your thoughts and questioning them?
Yeah, noticing your thoughts, that's something that I always do whenever I try to catch myself whenever I do these things. I think of how do I feel when I did this, and how does other people might feel after I did this. So noticing those thoughts and actions, and of course, yeah, logging those two. I'd say those are the two combos I personally do.
Do you think you've sort of always had a degree of self awareness or interest in yourself as a, and how I behave, etc., as a cause for the situations in your life and as the thing to work on, or do you think it's something that came in later?
I'd say it's more natural, and I wouldn't say that I'd label it as self-awareness at first. It's more of really being conscious of myself,
Mm,
and maybe it's because of I don't know, my upbringing, maybe the culture where I always try to think whether my actions are um, impacting others negatively.
mm,
So I think when I was a kid, that's how it started. Then I tried to um, be aware of my self-awareness, and then that's when I tried to dig deeper and see how I would benefit from really reflecting on, the things that I'm thinking, things that I'm doing, things that I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of layers to it, isn't there? Like, um, I find, I certainly do that a lot. I'm listening to my thoughts and I'm checking them and that sort of thing. But then you discover that for years there's been certain thoughts that you have that you've never noticed. You've just seen the world through those ones, and they've been the cause of so much. Like, I think the journaling aspect can help to sort of get that extra layer of perspective, because live in the moment there's just going to be certain blind spots we all have.
And I think it's a good visualization as well of, your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um yeah, the question can be as well, like, what's motivating, I guess, that initial self-awareness. I think a lot of us can be, it can be to do with how we're raised. I agree. There becomes that interest of like, oh, okay, the things I say and do really matter, and I need to like check how I'm
Uh-huh.
behaving to if I want things to go all right. And I think, yeah, that's some people for whatever reason get that in their upbringing, and I can relate to that. But that there was always the motive behind that was always something I was unconscious of, and then that my self improvement journey later, I've become aware of what's behind that awareness. Where it's like, okay, why though? Like, what do I actually want here? What am I trying to achieve? Because I think in the initial instance, probably a lot of that self awareness is motivated just by a desire to please others, or be approved of, or that sort of thing. That's what I found for myself anyway.
And one thing that I've heard from Kendall, I think that was the last episode, right? He mentioned the word reparenting, and
Mm.
I really like that. So that's really something new to me, and it's more of inner child work, and I think that it's because of our childhood traumas, our upbringing. So it's really good that we can reparent ourselves, and I think self-awareness is a very useful tool so that we can work on those traumas and problems we had as a child.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, definitely an important question to sort of consider when you're noticing your thoughts and you're wanting to change them is, how would a loving parent or respond to this, or how would I respond to this if I was a loving parent, right? Rather than, because sometimes I think we notice ourselves, we don't like something that's going on, we want to improve, but the thought process is, that was so bloody stupid, and
Hmm.
not good enough, and this, that, and the other thing, it's not. Yeah, I don't think that's a dynamic that's conducive to really knowing what our needs and our values are and being able to express them fully. And so, we're reading on Mindform at the moment, nonviolent communications, the last day of
Yeah.
the NVC month, and that's one of the things that I sort of forgot from my initial reading, that I'm just reading that part of the book now around, NVC as a way to talk to yourself, and I think the value of that does come from, it's it's a way of attending to yourself and perceiving yourself that is compassionate in the same way that a compassionate parent would speak to a compassionate child, or which anyone would agree, that a compassionate,
Hmm.
aware, sensitive parent is healthy to the development of the child. So if we can look at ourselves not in terms of what we are, what's wrong with us, but in terms of, oh, okay, what are the needs that I have going on, like what that are alive in me right now, what am I feeling and what am I needing that's motivating these behaviors or these thoughts,
Hmm.
um and then sort of checking in with that, then I think you can redirect yourself from a place of something like authenticity.
I like that.
Sure. So uh how is your interest in personal development, self awareness? How has that sort of intersected with your work in managing people and in communication? Like, what have you? Uh, yeah, maybe I'll just leave the question at that. How have those two things come together for you?
Because I was more self-aware, I was more careful of how I speak with people and how I can make sure that my message comes across. Especially, I work with a group of people I was responsible back then in terms of their goals, their targets. So I have to make sure that they're well coached and mentored, I'd say, so that they can meet their targets. So um, I think this is pretty outdated, but it's fun to look at. If you've heard of the bird personality test, they call it the dope personality test because it stands for dove, owl, peacock, and eagle. Yeah, I know we're trying to veer away from stereotyping and boxing people into categories, but I think there's a good somehow in doing this, um, because it helps us at least identify the tendencies of other people's and
Mm-hmm.
our own tendencies, and try to um, adapt to their tendencies
Mm-hmm.
or the language they speak per se. So let's say personally I'm a dove. So dove is basically more on the emotional side. Then um, if you're an eagle, you're more of the straightforward side. You're more focused on the results. You know, um, Owl is more of the data-driven one, focused on systems, following rules, and policies. Then there's Peacock, who are very extroverted. They like attention from others. Just to give a story back then, I was trying to share an announcement or an update or a project to my team back then. Then I mentioned it very briefly. This is the update. This is the project. This is what you have to do. The first person, let's say team member one, said, yes, okay, I can do that. Then went back to his station and then started working. The other one is a bit confused. So why do we have to do this? We have a lot of stuff already going on. And the other one is not saying anything. Who is the best person, by the way? And I thought that I was very clear with my communication, and he'd be able to grasp it quickly. And the other one is also trying to, I think, complain because of its additional work. Then I tried to dissect the information to the best person that I had back then that's how he understood. Step one, step two, this is why we're doing it, and this is how you will do it, and this will be the result. The other one is I tried to position it in a way that why are you reacting this way? I asked questions. Do you feel like you're overworked? Do you have a lot of stuff going on? More in checking the person, checking if they're okay, doing okay. The other one is more of, if you do this, if you do it this quickly, you can, reap the benefits and whatnot. So after that experience, I learned that there's no one shoe fit all kind of approach in terms of communicating with people. So as a communicator, as someone who's giving the message, it's your responsibility to be really understood clearly. And as a listener, it's your responsibility to get the information, um, regardless of the method it's said, regardless of the person who's talking. As a listener, you're responsible to understand the information. But back then, it's my responsibility to share the information. So that's what I did. So I think there's benefit in terms of at least understanding what is a tendency of the people that we're talking to, so that we can kind of speak their language.
Mm.
And that really helped me, in the long run in terms of dealing with people, speaking with them, but not really boxing them into these categories, but really trying to teach myself and them on how to adapt to different kind of languages per se.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think any communication context, I can see that applying. I think of the way that I understand a good teacher versus a poor teacher. A good teacher is looking at all of these kids who have different learning styles or different needs or
Mm-hmm.
different
Right.
abilities. And it's, okay, how can I present this information in different ways and communicate to these kids in different ways to make sure they all get the message? And then my understanding of a poor teacher is someone who gets up and presents the information and then condemns the kids who didn't understand it or didn't learn it the way that they taught it, condemns those kids as stupid or naughty or whatever. Um, you do see. My wife's a teacher, so I have a bit of a
Okay.
window into that teaching world. You do see
Hmm.
um, those different approaches out there, and the different impact that has on kids. Um, to me, I'm with you. When you're presenting information, your job is to make sure the information is received, not just to kind of say your piece and move on. Um, I'm curious. So, did you that specific sort of framework, that birds, dove, owl, peacock, eagle, was that framework on your mind when you interacted with these people and you were kind of thinking of different ways to? Yeah, just for a second, I'll just repeat that question. Um, so, when you were in this communication setting, when you were presenting this new sort of set of tasks or this new project to the members of your team, were you did you have a framework like something like that bird framework of dove, owl, peacock, eagle as you were I guess considering their different ways of receiving the information and how to communicate with them?
Yeah. So I always keep that in mind. If this person is very straightforward, let's say you're chatting with this person and they're using, let's say, minimal words. Okay, so this person doesn't really want to talk a lot. There's no, banter or hi, hello at first. Okay, so this person must be really straightforward, that let's get down to business type of person. And that's, in my head, that was, oh, he's an eagle, or she's an eagle, so something like that. So I always keep that in mind, but I also, you know put conscious effort to not really box them into these categories.
Mm,
Maybe at that time that's the behavior or personality that they're showing, but not all the time that's applicable. But I think for that specific moment, it's good that I have that framework at the back of my head, so that I can adjust accordingly, so that my message could easily come across.
yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I thought when you initially mentioned this in the call, this framework, and you said something like, oh, we don't want to put people in boxes. I had that thought like, well, it's useful. Like, it's like certain tendencies, certain, whatever's going on inside a person behind that, there are certain ways of speaking or responding, patterns that exist out there. And those patterns, uh, you can utilize knowledge, you can utilize toolkits to know how to get through to somebody, engage with somebody who's behaving, expressing in those ways. Um, and it only becomes a problem when you're right. What you try to avoid to do, when it's okay, they're that type of person and that's who they are, and sort of full stop. It's the same to me with diagnoses and sort of psychology, like clinical mental health diagnoses. It's like they're very useful. It's really handy to have ADHD, depression, anxiety, bipolar, autism, etc. diagnoses, because people have collected information around people who have these challenges. These medications or these toolkits are really useful to support them through those challenges. But at the same time, this is one of the first things I learned when I was doing my psych degree. It's like these diagnoses don't like exist per se. It's behavior is really complicated and integrated, and these are just we use these labels to try to capture um, sort of patterns that overlap and all these different facets from behavior to emotion. To thinking habits, all of that, and we do that because from that we can build toolkits to help people. So, yeah, that's just to say, especially with nonviolent communication on my mind this month, like, uh, yeah, what's alive in someone is totally more important than what they are. But it doesn't like frameworks are useful, and if you can remember that that's not the same thing as the person, it's just a
Right.
pattern you're recognizing.
Exactly.
It's no harm. It's helpful in my opinion.
I agree. So it's really a conscious effort to always remind yourself that you're not, like, judging the person, or you're
Mm,
just trying to analyze the situation. And like what you said, it such diagnoses helps us identify the next steps on how we should
exactly.
proceed with the situation.
Welcome back. We had a bit of technical trouble, so Arwill and I are back the next day to finish our chat. So let's just get back into it. I was asking you, so you've just been telling me, Arwill, about your workplace and some sort of personality models you use, the bird personalities, and how you try to adjust your communication style to meet different people's needs and ways of communicating. My question was, do you have sort of, is there anything specific that you look for? Like how are you able to tell if somebody you're trying to motivate or help to understand something needs more information versus needs empathy versus needs maybe like an incentive? Yeah, how do you pick up on that?
You look for cues whenever they speak. For example, if someone's really looking for just result and just looking for answer, let's say over chat, you'll notice that they don't really care about grammar, spelling, all those good stuff. Especially you're in the workplace, so sometimes it should be much more professional compared to your casual conversation. So I noticed that people who tend to, be straightforward, they use more a casual way of speaking, and they're more straightforward. They're very brief. Usually they won't ask you how are you doing today and just go straight with their question or whatever that it is that they need. If someone is in need
So
of,
hold on.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
if you meet someone who talks like that, is your response just to kind of talk in
Quick.
the same
Yeah,
way?
brief.
Just be really direct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Straight to
So
the
so
point.
I
Okay, awesome.
basically adapt the way they speak because what they need is a straightforward answer. So you give that to them. And
Hmm.
I feel like there's more understanding if you adapt to the way they speak. If someone's looking for, let's say, comfort, more empathy, you'll notice that they use words like "I feel like," more of asking, "What would you do if you were in my place," something like that.
Hmm.
So if they're using such words, I pick up those cues, and I feel like this person needs more comfort, consolation. So I have to be more careful with my words, try to be more sensitive, and try to be empathetic. So usually I start the conversation with, "How are you feeling today? Um, why do you feel that way? Did something happen? Everything good back home? Those small talks before really
Hmm.
getting down to business. If someone's more of into the incentives or maybe the kudos or the applause, you'll notice these people usually, and again, I'm not trying to box them into these categories, but usually they're very extroverted. They really like attention to the point that they fool around. They joke a lot, even sometimes inappropriately. Not good timing. So these folks usually they want applause. They want recognition. So if I notice that they focus more on how people perceive them, if they really want to be noticed, I focus my words and my the way I talk on how they would benefit from, let's say, this project,
Mm.
let's say from this task that I'm asking them to do. More focused on how they would benefit really from that conversation or from that task. So it's really, I guess to put it simply, noticing those cues and adjusting real time based on how they talk, so that you can speak basically their language.
It's really interesting to hear that, and it seems like quite an important idea. We've talked a lot, sort of in recent episodes on the podcast about communication. On my episode, I talked
But
about
with Peter, right?
nonviolent. Yeah, yeah, and Peter, yeah, and that was really awesome. And also with Thomas Zweifel talking sort of
Yeah,
about, conversation is what we're
right,
doing, and what are some principles there. But in none of those conversations did this idea come up, which is really a whole half of what communication is, which is there's the what you're putting out, but then there's the how is it received, and there's the person who's
right,
listening, right? Like if communication is relaying something from one mind to another, you need to know things about the other mind, so that you can ensure the message is understood on their terms or on terms they can understand. So yeah, it's not something I think a lot about communication. It's not something I think about often.
right. And what I've been saying is more of you as a communicator, right? You
Mm-hmm.
giving the information out to the person. But if you're someone who's listening, I always share this to people I talk to. I feel like there are three things that hinders us from accepting or receiving the information clearly, and
Mm-hmm.
and much of these are, I think, rooted from different biases we had in our mind. So the first reason why it's difficult for us to listen or no receive feedback is first, maybe we have a bias on that specific person. Maybe we just don't like that person, don't get their vibe, something like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes if we already have that impression, we tend to neglect whatever it is that they're saying. Second is the method they're saying it. Maybe we're not impressed with how they speak. Maybe it was during an argument or debate, which makes it more difficult for us to accept whatever it is that they're saying.
Mm,
If we really look at it objectively, you'll see that they have a point, and it's something that you might want to consider so that you can improve. And lastly, it's the feedback itself. I think there are times when we listen to what the person is saying and we feel like it's not applicable for us. But if we really, try to dissect it and dig deeper, there's really something that we can get from that feedback. So I think those
mm.
are the three main things that we should always remember whenever we're trying to listen to someone. And we feel like I think I'm not getting what he's saying. Maybe we have to, look back and ask those questions to ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Makes me think of sort of the framework of nonviolent communication, right? Is stepping out of this who is what into what's
Right,
alive in people, and I feel like in receiving feedback, that's a perfect example where all these normal ways of thinking, which is like, okay, who's right, who's wrong, who's a good guy, who's the bad guy, that gets in the way, right? Where
right, right.
when we're not asking we don't pay attention to, okay, what's actually going on in this person, and is that information useful to me to adjust my behavior. I think it's definitely the case that sometimes you might get feedback that's wrong, or you might think inapplicable, but even just if you can get your mind on it, on what that person's experience was and why they gave you that feedback, that's like good information for you, because it's like, okay, so when I meet people like that or people with those values, I need to work on communicating in this way so that they don't get that impression or they don't get affected like that. Like it is always handy information. But yeah, that dynamic of, okay, are they saying I'm bad or maybe they're bad? That kind of that game in your head, definitely I can see how that gets in the way. So um yeah, those three questions, I see that draws you back a little bit. What's the actual information?
Hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so these communication principles, obviously that's really relevant in your work and management, and it seems like you found an impact from applying it. Does it do these same principles, or how do you bring these same principles into your family relationships, whether that's partner, kids? Um, yeah, does it translate?
Yes, because I use this at work. Now I know how my brain functions, how my um, mouth functions whenever I speak. So I get to communicate that to my wife and to my kids. I know I said I'm a dove dominantly, like empathetic and all that, but some parts I'm also organized, really by the book, process oriented, step by step. So I always tell her that, and the funny thing is my wife is very spontaneous. She's very prompt, quick.
Mm,
But on the other hand, I'm usually stuck in this analysis paralysis. I'm that kind of guy. So I always tell her that you have to slow down. I'm not that kind of person who thinks quickly. So I always think of things thoroughly, and I can't act that quickly. So if you give me time, maybe I can let that thought sink first so that
mm-hmm,
I could adjust to what it is that you're saying or what it is that you want. Because and I think self-awareness is also a factor. If we don't have self-awareness, if you don't have that, if you don't know that about you, then you won't be able to communicate that. So
mm-hmm,
really understanding your tendencies helps in communicating your tendencies to others so that they get to speak your language too. At least if not, they get to understand you, why you function this way, why you act this way, why you speak this way. And sometimes there are things that we don't really mean it, but because those are our tendencies, we tend to communicate it that way. And it's a good thing that we communicate that we have those tendencies so that the other person receiving that information won't really accept the information at face value and get the chance to gets a chance to analyze it too and really understand what you're trying to say. It does its magic in our relationship, really, because again, we have, if you're going to look at it, maybe you'll think that we're opposites, but the way I see it, if you communicate clearly how you function, what your tendencies are, it's actually a good dynamic because she complements my weaknesses basically. She's very fast and I'm slow, so we get to complement each other. So
Mm.
if you don't communicate it that way, you'll feel like you're the opposite. You're not compatible, but it doesn't work that way with our relationship because of that level of communication.
I love that. It's just putting all the cards on the table, right? Like sometimes I feel just naming things goes a really long way. It removes the possibility of each person building this idea in their head of, oh, why is this person like that? What does it say about them? What does it say about me? And just, okay, this, if we're mutually aware of, okay, look, this is just the kind of stuff I have trouble with, or this is just the way I do things.
Mhm. Right.
Because then you can mutually figure out, okay, we can be aware of that. That's not you. That's just a thing. It's not me. It's not you. But also maybe we can come up with like a strategy to manage it. I had a friend who later in life diagnosed with ADHD, and she now goes about um, her life like sometimes in professional settings. If she thinks it's relevant, when she meets a new colleague, she'll say, "Oh, hi, I'm what's her name? I won't name her. I have ADHD, by the way. So like that means sometimes I might seem like I'm just being really short or dismissive, or sometimes might seem like I'm not paying attention. But this is just the way I am. So I hope you don't take that personally. Just that sort of thing. And she's really found that just bringing that, which is already in it, a reality, and the reality doesn't go away by bringing it up, but just putting it to everyone's attention, a lot less conflict comes out of that issue just by doing that. And I've certainly found uh, understanding it in those terms now, which I haven't in the past. But a lot of the conflicts I've had with my wife, that when that's managed to end, or at least come to sort of a healthier place, it has been through just bringing to the surface. Okay, look, this is actually just some stuff that's going on in me, or this is just a thing about whether it's a tendency or a need or a feeling, and it's something that I was just keeping in here and just bringing it to the surface. Then there's that understanding and empathy as well, right? Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
beautiful idea, and it does require self awareness.
Just yesterday, for example, I was really grumpy because I lacked sleep. So I communicated that, and I think that that's somehow related to what Ariel mentioned on one of our
No, that was Brandy,
Brandy. What was it,
but
Brandy?
yes,
Yeah, where you have to communicate what you're feeling right now, what's your current mood. Communicating that really helps because it also um, allows other people, your partner, to be specific, to understand where you're currently at, and maybe try to stretch that patience even further for that specific
yeah.
moment.
Yeah, there's so much stuff that we just don't name, but it has an impact, right? Like things that's a perfect. I mean, even I'm hungry. Like that's something that I've started just noticing more. That's like a new self awareness thing. It's like, oh, actually, like I'm hungry, or I'm diagnosed ADHD, so sometimes I just have this like restlessness that's a bit hard to place, and so. Just recently, I've just been sort of naming that when that's going on in me instead of acting out of it. Like to my wife, for example, and that just changes the vibe, because the fact that I was hungry and or restless, that was definitely going to cause issues like that. I'll be more frantic or impulsive or short with people. Like I get grumpy when I'm hungry. But just naming that, it's like, oh, okay, I understand.
And now that you've mentioned that, I find it funny because in parenting, that when our kids throw tantrums, usually it's because they're overwhelmed with their feelings, and sometimes when they're really young, they can't label what it is that they're feeling. So it's funny that now that we're grown up, we're still dealing with that kind of
It's the
problem.
same problem. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's the same problem. The hope is that yeah, the hope is, can I like get that message across really well to
Mhm,
my son, when he's going through, okay, I think this is what you're feeling. Is that right?
mhm.
Have those conversations all the time. Maybe when he's older, he won't be like the rest of us and just blindly play out his feelings without knowing why. um,
Yeah, so
yeah.
sorry.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I just wanna. circle back to when you said you had a friend who who has a boss who's disclosing their current situation. I resonate a lot with that because my current boss did the same thing with me, and it really helps. She mentioned that she has ADHD, and sometimes she comes off this way, and sometimes she won't respond. Sometimes she forgets, so you have to remind her. If she didn't disclose that, I might have judged her. She's not competent and whatnot, But since she mentioned everything to me, I'm now more understanding, and now I get to help her so that she can help me. So that level of communication, self awareness, and even um, openness to sharing that information really helps with overall communication and understanding other people.
Mm. Yeah, one thing I find really uplifting about that um, is that when people share things about themselves, I think there's just a natural desire and shared motivation to help each other and meet each other's needs and make it work.
Yeah.
And the reason, and when we don't do that, um, it's really just, I think, because we lack that information. We haven't seen the person, but when we do, I think we just want to help. And I think there's, you said, oh, I might have judged her. There's two risks. There's that I might, if someone doesn't share something about themselves, they might be judged, or someone might take their behavior personally and judge themselves. Those are
Mhm.
the sort of the two risks. But yeah, when you bring the stuff to the surface, it's no longer a game of who's the problem. It's where's the problem, and we just both want to help each other solve it, and that's awesome. That motivation can be triggered in people just by a bit of vulnerability and self awareness.
Agree.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, I think we're about time to wrap up this call. So just a sort of a few questions, looping back to the at the start, we had this sort of map landscape metaphor. So the landscape is this journey you've been on, your work, your family, all the stuff um, have been encountering in your life, and the map is the beliefs, values, the decisions you use to understand this world, and that helps you navigate it effectively. What is something like a new revision you're making to your map at the moment? What's something you're questioning in your life right now? A new idea you're excited about?
It's something that I've mentioned earlier in our session in passing. It's really trying to incorporate whatever it is that I've learned when I had this phase when I stopped having faith in God, but now
Mm-hmm.
trying to incorporate those while still believing in God. That's the first one. Second is again, my self improvement journey was really self centered, really focused on how I
Right,
could
of course.
improve myself, how I could be like this, be like that. But now that I started parenthood and now married, I wanna explore, altruism, helping others, how that helps us feel more happiness, contentment, and overall, flourishing, I'd say. So those are the two things that I want to explore more. And I guess the first one is more of the revision, and the second one is exploring more.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention at the time when you brought that up is that I can completely relate to one thing you said, which is in the past kind of almost just sort of struggling to understand altruism, or
Mhm.
like
Yep.
what is love, like what is that, like almost being a little bit confused, or finding it hard to pin down or pinpoint. That was like my experience before I had a kid, and now I don't know. I don't think about it much. It's just how I
Okay.
feel. Like I love him. So
It's like
uh,
natural.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. I get maybe that both of those are just. It's just that both of the revisions you're on. Maybe it's just part of growing up, right? Like the world is not just about me. It's things bigger than myself. And this. I really like this statistic. There's these this big study was done by the American by Martin Seligman, who's like the head of the American Psychological Association, or he was at least involved in the study, I think. And well, he shared it in his TED talk. That's all I know. And the researchers found that they correlated. Firstly, they correlated pleasure, like how much time you spend in pleasure versus pain, with your overall life satisfaction. They also correlated time in flow state with overall life satisfaction. And then they correlated involvement in like groups or organizations or larger missions and charitable stuff. They correlated that with life satisfaction. And that's the order at which they correlated. So there's almost no connection between how happy you are about your life as a whole. There's no connection between that and how much time you spend like indulging in pleasures, like, you know, sex or drinking or movies or holidays or whatever. And there's a pretty decent correlation between how much time you spend in flow state. So that's like if you're an artist and the time you spend painting, or if you're a surfer, the time you spend surfing, or whatever it is. And then there's a much stronger than both of those correlation between overall life satisfaction and a sense. The way they articulate it was like a sense that you're a part of something bigger than yourself, or you're adding to something bigger than yourself. So maybe we're growing up, we're just making the connection. It's like, oh, this is what actually feels good, and these other things, they're not as well connected to that. Anyway, last question. So looking over your map right now, what do you think is a key insight you'd really like to leave us with that has really helped you navigate? Sort of one idea that's been essential in your map to navigate your landscape.
What really helped me is looking at a different aspect of my life. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the 8 domains of wellness.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So whenever I do my, logging, journal, and goal setting, I always think of those 8 domains or 8 dimensions. So first is physical, emotional and mental, social, intellectual, environmental, spiritual, occupational, and financial. So those 8 things. And I feel like that really covers all of the aspects of life that we have, so that you can make sure that you're striking that good balance in your life. Because if you just focus on spiritual, you might, struggle with financial. If you just focus on occupational, maybe you'll have a problem with social. So, jotting those down, those 8 dimensions, would really help you balance things out and make sure that you have a goal for each aspect of your life, so that you won't get lost and you get to have a good pacing in terms of your self-improvement journey. So I'd say look into those 8 aspects whenever you're doing your goal setting.
Awesome. Yeah, self-awareness has definitely come up as a theme in this convo, and it's cool to think of a framework whereby you can make sure you're looking at each part of that, right? Because we're all going to have blind spots. So having a good list like that can really help in those moments of reflection to not miss out on something important that's going on in your life. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Arwill. It's been a pleasure talking to you, catching up with you again, and I really enjoyed just exploring your unique wisdom and your self-development journey. What a pleasure.
And thank you very much, Frank, for having me. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah. All right. All the best. Bye-bye.
All right. Good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mindform podcast. I'm Ryan A. Bush, founder and author of Designing the Mind and creator of Mindform. Mindform is an exclusive community and training platform for sculpting your psychological software. Members get access to a group of like-minded psychotechs, including all of our guests on this podcast, gamified growth tools, events and retreats, and a collection of transformative programs for mental health and self-mastery. You can learn more and apply to join at mindform.io/podcast. I hope to see you inside.